So recently we had a family gathering of 7 people, so I decided to make my chicken schnitzel. The difference between mine and others, I guess, is the shredded bacon that I add into the breading. So it adds a little bit of slight bacon flavor, and it makes a nice addition to the flavor. So I'm going to go through the ingredients. First off, for 7 pieces, and then for 4 I'll list them off. So for 7 pieces you need a cup of flour, 1.5 tablespoons of paprika, 1.5 tablespoons of sesame seed, 3 tablespoons of pre-cooked bacon diced, half a teaspoon of salt, sunflower oil, 3 large eggs, and 3 cups of Panko breadcrumbs. Here you can freeze frame for a recipe for 4 pieces. I use Panko breadcrumbs. I like the texture. You can also use regular breadcrumbs as well. So this is store-bought pre-cooked bacon. I find it easy to work with for when you're dicing it up and making a very consistent cut. But you can also make bacon and reserve some. Just don't make it too crispy. You want to be able to slice it similar to this. Okay, so make a nice fine cut, because this is going into breadcrumbs and it's going to be your coating. So you don't want any large chunks. You want to make it pretty fine. So because I was cooking for 7 people, we're going to cut 4 large chicken breasts in half. And generally large chicken breast, even the small ones, sometimes come with a tenderloin that hangs off. So you want to cut those off, and I'll show you how. They're also called tenders, but you can also reuse those for stir fries or cook them as part of the recipe. But I'm going to show you how to take those off. Okay, when you flip it over, you'll see these extra pieces hanging off. You just slice those off. Your goal is to have just the breast itself. So any little pieces, any fat, any sinew, there you can see a piece on the end I trim off. So this is what you want. You want to put your hand on top to hold it down firmly. Use your knife nice and level and cut 3/4 to 80% of the way through. Just keep slicing, try to make even cuts, but don't go all the way through. So we're going to flip it over, lay it flat, just like you would be butterflying, and just give it a good slice down the center. And again, you want 2 even halves. Now occasionally you're not going to make a perfect cut. Some are going to be slightly thicker than the others. I guess it all depends on your knife skills, but that's what you want to end up with. So I'll show you one more time. We'll take the tenderloin off. So any little extra pieces, and you want to kind of just have a nice consistent piece like that. Run your knife down the center, but don't go all the way through. Flip it over, give it one more slice, and then you want to lay it flat and cut straight through to make 2 even pieces. Again, you can use the tenders for chicken fingers or stir fry. You can reserve those for later. So I use a large Ziploc bag. It's, to me, a lot easier than laying out saran wrap and having that move around on you. So it's easier just to put it in a large bag. Here's a mallet. You always use the flat side for when you're using when you're doing pounding of the chicken breast. So there you can see I'm just giving both sides a good pounding. You don't want to overdo it, because then the meat will start to shred on you. So just give it a good maybe 15-20 second pounding each side. There you can see it kind of broke through the bag, which doesn't really matter because we're not going to reuse this bag later anyway. So you're just making sure that it's in the center of the bag. Okay. Again, use the flat side of the mallet. If you use the other side, it'll tear right through the bag. Then I had a large coffee with lots of caffeine, and this is what happened. So, yeah. You want to have a separate plate off to the side so you can lay them out. I made a couple of small ones too, because there's adult portions and then kid portions too. So whatever size you want to make them, but generally you're going to pound them to roughly double in size. So there's your 7 pieces ready for the next step, which is breading. So you have 3 large bowls or 3 trays, and on the left you'll see I have the 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and in the center we're going to have 3 large eggs, and on the right we'll have the panko breadcrumbs. So with the eggs, I add just a teaspoon of water just to increase the viscosity a bit. So I break them up with a fork and mix them together. You can do this separately in a bowl too. I try to keep the amount of dishes to a minimum. The panko breadcrumbs, you could also pound those in a separate bag if you want them a little less coarse, but I don't mind. This particular brand isn't very coarse, so some panko breadcrumbs can be pretty coarse. So I'm adding here my diced pre-cooked bacon, just quickly mixing it in by hand, and then I'm going to add my other ingredients. So obviously my hands are clean. You could use a fork as well, or whatever tool you want. Here I'm adding my paprika, just regular paprika, not hot, just kind of a regular sweet paprika. There's my salt, my sesame seeds. So you'll notice that the bacon, diced bacon, will generally be coated in the paprika as well, so it's kind of it gives it a nice color. But give this a really good mix because this is going to be coating your chicken, and you want it to be pretty much the same flavoring for every person's portion. So give it a really good mix. And you can always add more breadcrumbs if you find this is not enough for the size of pieces of chicken that you have. In the meantime, you want to be heating up your oil, ½ inch of whatever cooking oil you want to use on the stove, okay? So there you can see everything's been mixed nice and consistently. And we'll go through the breading process. So yeah, just typical breading process of dunking it in flour. Shake off all the extra. Try to get some on the counter and on the floor. Usually how I do it. Do both sides. And then I just kind of let it drip off and put in the breadcrumbs. Then I take a fork and I just scoop a little bit onto the top. It helps with getting your hands too wet. It makes the flipping a little bit easier, but whatever method you want to use for breading is fine. Okay, so give both sides the same amount of coating. I always just push it down with a fork just so it sets properly. And then have a plate standing by to put all your breast laid out. So here we have on the stove, it's a cast iron frying pan, whatever pan you want to use. We're looking for about 350, give or take a bit, but you don't want it too hot because they'll burn. But generally around 350. If you go too low, they're going to get really oily and greasy. So be very careful when you lay them in. You don't want any splashing, especially if you use an open flame. This happens to be induction, so it's a little bit safer, but be very careful when you're working with oil on the stove. Okay, so we're looking for, in my case, I like golden brown. Some people go a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. So we're just going to check the bottom after about between 2 and 3 minutes. It's always a little bit different, but when you see it's golden brown, you want to flip them over. This one was not quite done, so I just put it back in. And on the side there, you see I have a large tray. And it's also a good idea to line it with paper towel to absorb some of the extra oil. But again, try to keep the temperature at 350 and never do more than 2 pieces per pan, depending on the size of the pan you have. But the more pieces you add, the quicker the temperature drops. So you kind of just want to take your time and do this. Don't do them too quick because the oil temperature will drop and they're going to end up a little bit too greasy. Okay, so let them drain off here. So I'm doing 7, and I did put about a ½ inch of sunflower oil, which I like it because it doesn't impart too much oily flavor of, if you have an oil that has a very distinctive flavor, then like sesame oil or something like that, you don't want to be using that. Use a fairly neutral vegetable, sesame, avocado oil, something like that. It's something with a fairly good smoke point as well. You don't want to be smoking up the kitchen as much. So that's what they look like. You can see the sesame seeds stand out a bit, and they give a little bit of a nutty flavor. But the added bacon is very subtle, but it adds a nice flavor as well. Okay, so give that a try. Again, I had included the recipe for 4 pieces, so if you just want to try 4 for now. But yeah, give it a try. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this recipe. Please subscribe for more videos. Bye for now.